Hi everyone, this is Jim. In this video I wanted to start taking a look at my games that I played this year in the 2015 US Open. The US Open is a tournament that's been going for a long time. This is actually the 116th US Open, and it was played in Phoenix this year. And it was so hot that the joke was going around that there was a contest to see if the temperature could match the number of the U.S. Open. It got up to 110 to 112, but I don't think it actually hit 116. But definitely hot out there. The U.S. Open is a very interesting tournament. It's 9 rounds, and with a slow time control. The main time control is game in 2 hours. 40 moves in 2 hours, and then another hour for the rest of the game, all with a 5-second delay. So very generous time control. And there's a 9-day schedule where you just play one game per day, which is at 7 in the evening. So that allows for some tourism if you want to go out during the day. So the U.S. Open is kind of a fun tournament. Also, it's fun because it's all in one section. So in the early rounds, you can get paired up against very high players. I think in the 9-day group, there's a player rated around 1750 that was in the round 1 playing against Grandmaster Alejandro Ramirez. I was playing in the 6-day section, which is a little bit shorter. The time control stays the same, but there are 3 days where you play 2 games per day, one at noon and one at 7. But all with the slow time control. And then there's also a 4-day option where the early rounds are played with a fast time control, and then the later rounds at a slower time control. And then for the last few rounds, all the sections merge, so it's really just one big section by the end. In my section, the top board, the lower rated player on the top board was around 1850, so I wasn't quite high rated enough to make it to the top board. But I got a pretty strong opponent in round 1, and that was woman Grandmaster Angelina Belakovskaia, and she's rated USCF rating of 2294. So anyway, let's go ahead and take a look at this game. I thought I'd do maybe 2 games per video, go through them kind of quickly, but show some of the highlights and give you a feel for the up and downs of playing in a large tournament like this. So Angelina kicks off with c4. We get an English opening, and I play my usual setup. She goes knight c3. I go c5. She went g3. And I go d5. That's a typical early setup. So we're still in the opening book at this point. She takes, I take, bishop g2, hitting the knight, and now I play the move e6, supporting it. Usually at this point I just try to decide between e6 and taking the knight. Both appear to be fine, but there's a third choice here I really didn't think about, but it was the opening book. His main move in the opening book was knight to c7, and the engine thinks it's an okay move too. Just avoiding the exchange and keeping some more pieces on the board could be an idea to reroute this knight and then join with the other knight and concentrate on the d4 control, so control of the d4 square. So it could be part of a strategy to control the d4 square. Anyway, that might be an interesting way to play sometime. I didn't really think about that at all. I just played my usual e6 move, knight f3, and knight c6. So we get a pretty typical position out of the opening, and nothing special is going on. I think I will just go forward some moves here. I get castled. The nice thing about the English is that both sides get to get all their pieces out. Rarely do you have these early explosions where things fall apart before sides have finished developing. And now a bit of a rare move, knight to d2, opening up the bishop. And perhaps with the idea this knight can reroute to c4 or to e4. An interesting way to play. I played b6 here. I'm just going to try and oppose the bishops on this diagonal, and so nothing special is going on. It's interesting that she's not trying to kill me right out of the box, but is just content to play slowly, build up her position, and wait for her opportunities. So bishop to b7. Bishop to e3. So this was the first really interesting moment in the game where I have a decision to make. Should I take that bishop or not? The idea is that she'll probably take back with the pawn here, open up the f-file, and get some interesting kind of counterplay. And maybe also these 3 pawns in the center can be pushed forward to create some play as well. So and an interesting choice. Now, and in compensation, I get the bishop pair. So the chess engine thinks that taking that bishop is a reasonable choice. But it likes my move okay too. So my move is a little bit different. I thought I didn't want to necessarily fall into her plans and just take that bishop, but I wanted to try and play something else. So I played knight d4. And now I was thinking of something like this, where she takes the knight, I take back with the pawn, and then maybe knight to b4, going after the pawn and trying to pressurize that pawn and try and prove that advanced pawn is a weakness. So I thought that might be an interesting kind of game. And I decided to play it when I realized I had this move bishop to f6 that would defend the pawn there, and it looked like I could hold on to it. And I think that's an okay position. In fact, what she did play, she started out by taking, but she didn't go knight b4. And I looked at this position later. It turns out if after knight b5 to try and pressurize the pawn, the move bishop to c5 defending it is even better. The bishop on f6, it's not clear if that's a good square for it. It gets in the way of the knight. But bishop to c5 is fine, and actually black has a good game. But she didn't play that way. She just took off the knight. And so we get this position where, I have to take back. She takes back. So a much simplified position. And, black is still doing okay here. Nothing really great has happened for either side. And I do have this advanced pawn, which maybe will be an advantage at some point in the game. So I'm still in the game after about 15 moves. She plays queen to b3 here, setting up the possibility of more trades. And I wasn't sure I liked that idea. I mean, the knight at any time can hop to this square or this square, defending the queen and kind of provoking a trade. Now, maybe white is looking forward to an endgame here and trying to go after my advanced pawn. So I decided to keep the queens on and played queen h5. And now the second really interesting move from my opponent here. Now my queen on h5 is hitting the e-pawn there. And so naturally I expected her to defend it. I was just wondering how she was going to defend it with a rook move or a queen move, different ways to play it, or even maybe pushing the pawn forward and going after my pawn right away. But instead she completely ignored the threat to the e-pawn and played king to g2. So just sort of egging me on here to take the pawn. So I took it. And this is okay, but actually white does get compensation for this pawn sacrifice, so it's interesting to see how this works out from this point. And it's something you should think about. Maybe it is a good point to pause the video and see if you can figure out what kind of compensation white has after I take the pawn. Okay, I grabbed it. She brought her rook over. There's only one square the queen can go to. There's all these squares are. Maybe I could have gone to g4. I'm not sure. But anyway, I went back to h5, and now the rook comes forward, harassing the queen again, and the queen goes to g6. So I had seen about this far, and I thought I was okay over here. But what's interesting is that my queen is it's not exactly trapped, but it's kind of cut off from the rest of the board. So these rooks are setting up like a wall, and my queen is over here. So if white can get some activity going on the queen side, and my queen is away from the action over here, that's some pretty interesting stuff. Okay, I play okay. Actually, black is better here according to the chess engine. Black is a pawn up, and so the engine thinks there's not quite enough compensation, but well, we'll see what happened in the game. I bring my rook over to d8. She lifts her rook to e4, taking more squares away from my queen. I go bishop to d6 here. This move she actually criticized after the game. She said she thought the bishop to d6 was when I started to go downhill. I wanted originally to play bishop to f6, and I was just worried about this. I thought there was a tactic here against e6. Rook takes e6, pawn takes, rook takes, and then this diagonal is open, and the knight can move with tempo. So I thought there was a tactic there, and the bishop interferes with the queen's defense of the e6 square, so that's why I moved my bishop to d6. But it turns out this tactic doesn't work. Bishop to f6, and takes, takes, takes. The key move I have here to defend against the various threats is just queen to f7, and puts the queen on this opposing diagonal. Now this the knight can still hop in here, attack my queen, and there are potential discovered attacks on the king here, but well, just some trades, and everything is okay. I can give back the exchange, and after this I stay a bishop up, and black has won a couple of pieces, but I mean white has won a couple of pieces, but I have won a couple of pawns, but I have an extra piece, and white started from being a pawn down. So anyway, this is just winning for black. So really, that's the move I could have played here, bishop f6. And with bishop f6, there's still some advantage to black in this position. Anyway, I played bishop to d6, and much to my surprise, she just took that bishop off. So this is kind of another interesting decision. But if you think about it, that bishop was the natural defender of this advanced pawn, and so now this is some kind of weakness that she can go after. And also, the bishop was helping to control squares around my queen. So now rook to f4 was played here, taking more squares away from my queen. I mean, I had the idea of maybe bringing my queen to f6 and getting back into the game this way, but that possibility is gone. Let's see, I bring my rook to the d file, so I'm doubled up defending here. Queen to c4 was played, putting more pressure on my pawn, and just putting this on a good square. And now here's the next move where my position starts to go downhill. I play the move h6, trying to give my queen another square, also control this square, prevent rooks from coming here and trapping my queen. And now the queen has one more flight square. The problem with this move is, where is the queen going from h7? And once again, the queen is cut off from the rest of the game. These two rooks here are keeping the queen completely, it's not, I don't want to use the word trap, because normally when you trap a piece, that implies you win it. But the queen is definitely in a box here and can't get out. So the chess engine finds a nice maneuver here. What the chess engine thinks is best play here is queen to h6. Queen to h6. And then h4, taking away more squares from the queen, and now g6. So that's the maneuver the queen prefers. And after, say, a3, queen to g7, the queen is getting away from the threats of the rooks, and now has a path back into the game if things start happening on the queen side. Also here, it's immediately looking at this rook. So in this position, black is still a little bit better. Not a whole lot. So white at this point has sufficient compensation for the pawn, probably. Anyway, so that's what I should have played, queen h6 and g6. Played h6, which, if you think about it, also takes this h6 square away from the queen. And as I said, the idea of maneuvering the queen to h7 doesn't seem to lead very well. Doesn't seem to lead anywhere. I would have to go queen h7, king h8, queen g8 to try and get the queen out of the box. Anyway, h4 was played, taking more squares away from my queen. And in order to try and get my queen back into the game, I decided to give the pawn back with f6. The chess engine would still just hold on to the material and play h4 with about an even position. But starting with this move f6, now white is a little bit better, and white's advantage slowly increases the rest of the game. So like I said, this gives the pawn back. She takes it and went with this check. And I was thinking, is this really all that bad. It looks like a very even position, a symmetrical pawn structure. So I was kind of surprised she allowed this sort of thing. She just went rook e4 and allowed the queen trade. So I went ahead and went for this endgame. And right here, probably this is still an endgame I could hold with good play. But my very first move in this position where we've just entered the endgame is actually a mistake. So if you want to pause here, here's another point where you can think about what's a good move. So the chess engine suggestion is rook to d5. So if you thought of that move, that's good thinking. It's the end game, and you want to activate your rook. That's a key piece. You also want to activate your king. So king to f7 is the move that I played, but in this case, it was more important to get that rook active. This rook just goes over to c6, taking up a good square. I played rook d7. I want to control the 7th rank, prevent that check and winning a pawn. And then, let's see, h5, taking more space over here on the king side. And now I went rook d5, counterattacking. I was trying to activate my rook, but at this point I go down material, because after this check, let's see, I came forward with the king, I believe. No, I had to go back, right. I wanted to hold on to this pawn. She grabs a pawn, I grab a pawn, she comes here, attacking my d pawn, and I can't defend that pawn. There's no piece that can defend it. So, and the king has been pushed back to the 8th rank. So white is just winning here, and it's pretty routine from this point on. So let's just go through the rest of the game. I tried some maneuvers to hold on to that pawn with my rook, actually. So I'm not. So maybe it's not entirely true. I'm losing immediately, but what the contortions I have to go to try and hold on to that pawn result in my rook being out of play, which let's cancel that. I played g5 here. Another mistake that allowed her king to get into the game. And after a few more moves, let's see. Yeah, she chased my king all the way over here, and then is going to gobble up another pawn. Also, this pawn is just going to queen. So at this point, I resigned. But and a pretty interesting game, and I thought I was playing pretty well, so I felt good about my first game. Let's take a look at the second game. In the second game, I had the white pieces. And this kind of set up a pattern for the rest of the tournament, actually. I would play a game against a higher-rated player with the black pieces, and then I'd play a game against a lower-rated player with the white pieces. My opponent is a young man, not a kid, but a young adult, rated 1541, and someone who's been studying the game for a while and had some definite opening ideas and got a pretty good position here. So let's put the opening. What he played was a Sicilian, and we get the Sveshnikov variation. So he plays the main line of the Sveshnikov for quite a few moves. So let's just put this on the board. And this is seems to be a good opening for black. He seems to come out of this pretty well. Knight to c3, e5, kicking the knight. That's characteristic move of the Sveshnikov. And d6 now, preventing knight d6. Bishop g5, pinning this knight. This is an important move if you're white against the Sveshnikov. You need to pin that knight because there's going to be this threat of these pawns coming forward and forking the knights, and you need this escape square on d5 for this knight. So that's what this pin is all about, and you really need to play it at this point because after bishop g5, black can start with these forcing moves. a6, kicking the knight back, b5, threatening this immediate fork, and now you have to play knight to d5 to kind of stay in the game, or you could take the knight first. Both of those are playable. But this is one of the main lines, bishop e7, and then taking the knight. The thing is that the pride of white's position is this knight here. And so you're willing to give up the bishop pair in order to hold on to this advanced knight and to keep the d-pawn backwards. So you've got pressure on the d-pawn, and black has the bishop pair. And the chess engine rates this position as about even. I play c3, which is the main move here, although c4 I think has been gaining in popularity recently. But c3, you need to get this knight back into the game. it's stuck over here on the rim. And that's the defects of White's position, are the time it's going to take to get this piece back in the game, and the fact that he doesn't have the bishop pair and Black does. Okay, so bishop to b7 was played here. Right now, the main move in this position is to castle or to play bishop g5, avoiding the trade of the knight for the bishop. So I'm not actually interested. Like I said, this knight is one of the key features of White's position. So I'm not really interested in trading for the bishop, but I guess the bishop is also actively posted on g5. So that's one of the main ideas here. And actually something like that occurs in the game. But he plays bishop b7 first. Not a bad move, but it's just not the top choice in the database. I go knight c2, bringing the knight back, and now he goes bishop g5. So this is a kind of position that's about even, and it stays that way. You know, one of the drawbacks of playing mainline positions like I do, I mean, I like to learn the main lines and play them just because my theory is that the main lines have been tried and tested. So, you know, if you play a mainline position, you from the opening, you should get a position which is at least playable. But your opponent can also get a playable position, and so in some way, you know, you might want to challenge your opponent more in the opening by playing some offbeat moves. But it takes a lot of study to learn the offbeat moves as well as the main moves. So, you know, I just play the main moves. Anyway, I just do some normal developing moves. Bishop e2 I played here. The chess engine thinks actually that I could go for an advantage with the move a4, which I really didn't think about. But once again, whenever you see this pawn structure from your opponent, the pawns on a6 and b5, you should always think about undermining it. That should at least be a candidate move. And I wasn't really thinking in that direction at all. I played bishop e2, and he went knight to e7 here, challenging my knight. And now I decide to bring this knight forward to b4. If I went to this square, if I went to the e3 square, it also supports the knight, but he could just trade it off. So I want to put this on a square where I'm supporting my knight and it's not so easily chased away. And I did try and calculate a little bit here. I tried to figure if this move was safe. Can he chase my knight away and then grab here? But the problem is he drops this pawn with check. So I think this knight b4 is still okay. He castles here, and I castle. And here he could have thought about playing a5 maybe and kicking my knight away. But, well, this pawn will still be loose. It doesn't go with check at this point, but it's still loose. Instead, he plays a very thematic move. This is still a good play from Black. f5. What you often want to do in the Sveshnikov is undermine the center, right? White has built up a center with a pawn and a piece, and you know, this piece is going to try and dominate the game and keep this pawn backwards. And but Black can try and undermine things. So this f5, very typical move in the Sveshnikov. So at this point, I decide to trade and save things that way, trade off this knight. The chess engine points out I could have tried bishop to f3 and held on to things that way. And that's a move I didn't think about, but it's pretty interesting. But knight e7 is not a bad move. Knight takes with check. He takes back with the bishop. And then I grab this pawn. So I've given up the center. Okay, he takes back with the rook. And we'll pause here to think. I've given up the center, but I thought I would have some pressure against these weak pawns here. I still have control of the... I'm starting to lose control of the d5 square. It's a little bit unfortunate. But still, this is an okay position for White. And once again, the chess engine wants to play with a4. So the move I make is a bit of a mistake. I thought queen b3 check and rook to d1 is a way to try and reestablish control over that d5 square. But after queen b3 check, he could play d5 here. What he played was king h8, which kind of helped me a little bit. But he could play d5 and just block that diagonal, and you know, he's got control of the d5 square now. I've let go of it. Bring the rook over here. What he can do to save the pawn is take the knight off. And then queen c7 is the follow-up move here. He's holding on to this pawn. his pieces are actively placed, and he's got good center control. Black is actually better in this position. So that my queen b3 move was a little bit of a mistake, and fortunately for me, he didn't exploit it to the fullest. You got to see not only the pawn push, but also the exchange of the knight, pulling my queen away as a way to hold on to that center. So he just moved his king. I moved my rook to the d file, and he goes queen b6. So I managed to maintain my slight opening advantage, and but still black is doing fine here. Let's see, I go knight d5, I get my knight back on that good square. He trades it off, but I'm in a position to take back with a piece. Oh, cancel that. Yeah, taking back with the rook is kind of a natural move, but I realized actually he's got a plan here of putting pressure on the f file, and I thought I might need this move bishop to f6 at some point, and so the queen on d5 here is actually very helpful, and this was the top engine choice too. The queen on d5 is very helpful in defending this square, and we'll see this happen in the game. He played rook a to f8. I played bishop f3, blocking this diagonal, because otherwise he's got three pieces piled up on that f2 square. So I need this somewhat rickety construction just to hold on to it. And now he makes the mistake. He played this move e4. So he'd been thinking very deeply all through the game and playing well, but he had sort of expected me to play rook takes instead of queen takes. And so if the rook was there, then this e4 move would be a strong move. But with the queen there, I can just take it. The bishop can't take is the point, but the queen can take. And so now I am just a pawn up. He no longer has a strong center. In fact, this is a weakness that has to be defended by a piece. He goes for activity here, an interesting way to play. So probably the right choice, trying to get some counterplay going since he's down in material. I have a plan of just trading things off and winning the end game. So let's see. I bring my rook up, starting on that plan. He comes here chasing my queen away. I go to d3, putting more pressure on the d pawn. And he decides to just give up that pawn too, and just go for more pressure on the f pawn here. And I go ahead and take it. This is one of those things you have to calculate a little bit. After I take, he's going to play queen g5, and he thought he had just a winning move. He didn't think I could actually take that pawn there, but I had calculated this. And then rook back here, hitting the queen, so he doesn't have time to exploit the loose bishop. That was the point of queen g5, by the way. It pins this pawn, and then this bishop is just hanging. He's threatening rook takes f3 there. But he doesn't have time for it. But you do have to calculate this sequence. If he were to play... Oh, by the way, the chess engine is completely unimpressed and wants to just play rook takes a6 here. But, well, you have to have nerves of steel to play like that. I definitely want to try and chase the queen away from my king side. So eventually he realized that this isn't, his planned attack isn't working. For example, if he were to take the bishop, at first you might think this is okay. He's up a piece and he's attacking my queen. But I have the move queen takes here. And now his queen is hanging and his rook is hanging with mate. So he's got to take the queen. And then I take the queen. And then he can save the rook or take my rook. But if he takes my rook, it's just more material comes off. So basically I end up exchange up. He saves his rook, and I save my rook. Maybe rook to g4. And so, I'm just the exchange up plus a couple of pawns. So easily winning endgame. So let's go back to the game. I had to calculate that before playing rook d5, but I had seen that queen takes f3 was going to hold. So he drops his queen back to f6, and I play my rook to d4, just wanting to trade. And I think it's pretty much over. Let's go through the rest of it a little more quickly. He maneuvers a little bit with his pieces. I line up on the bishop. And this is kind of his last mistake. He plays g5 here, defending his bishop, and maybe with aggressive intentions, if allowed, to play rook to f4 and pawn to g4, but it created a weakness around his king. And well, actually, with that hint, maybe you can pause and find the right move for white at this point. Okay, I played the move rook to d7, and there's now all kinds of threats. We've opened up the second rank here, and there's also the idea of just bringing the queen here and forcing a queen trade. He tried to continue the attack with queen h6. I went queen d4 check anyway. He blocked with the rook, and then I just bring my other rook into the game. Let's see, he went ahead and took on f2. I had to also calculate this sequence. He sacks a bishop. He can try and win the bishop back with this f pawn push maybe at some point, but well, his king is still in some danger, and this rook is pinned here, so nothing is really happening. He tried to unpin his rook with king to g8, but now I can bring the other rook in with rook to e8 check. So I like this because I was getting all of my pieces into the game, following those usual rules. So he blocks, I take, takes, and I just get my king back to g1, so this bishop is no longer pinned, so the bishop can contribute. He tries rook to f5, cancel that, rook to f5, and I play bishop to d5 check, and he's going to lose more material. The king, if the king goes to f8, that queen to the corner is actually checkmate, so he's got to block the check with something, and I'll pick up some more material. So he just resigned here. So interesting game, and a nice counterpoint to my first game. So after 2 rounds, I'm at a score of 1 win and 1 loss, and I'll continue this with more videos. See you then. Bye.